Good day, and welcome to the Biocept second quarter conference call. All participants will be in listen-only mode. Should you need assistance, please signal a conference specialist by pressing the star key followed by 0. After today's presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. To ask a question, you may press star then 1 on your touch-tone phone. To withdraw your question, you may press star then 2. Please note this event is being recorded. I would now like to turn the conference over to Jody Kane. Please go ahead.
This is Jody Kane at LHA. Thank you for participating in today's conference call. Joining me from Biocept are Michael Nall, President and Chief Executive Officer, Tim Kennedy, Senior Vice President of Operations and Chief Financial Officer, and Corey Dunn, Senior Vice President of Commercial Operations. During this call, management will be making a number of forward-looking statements within the meaning of the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Forward-looking statements include all statements that are not historical facts and generally can be identified by terms such as anticipates, estimates, believes, could, expects, intends, may, plans, potential, predicts, projects, should, will, would, or the negative of those terms. Forward-looking statements involve known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors that may cause actual results, performance, or achievements to be materially different from those statements, as well as performance or achievements that are expressed or implied by forward-looking statements. In particular, there is significant uncertainty about the duration and contemplated impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This means results could change at any time, and the contemplated impact of COVID-19 on Biocept's operations, financial results, and outlook is a best estimate based on the information for today's discussion. For details about these risks, please see the company's SEC filings. The content of this call contains time-sensitive information that is accurate only as of today, August 12, 2020. Except as required by law, Biocept disclaims any obligation to publicly update or revise any information to reflect events or circumstances that occur after this call. Now I'd like to turn the call over to Michael Nall. Mike?
Thank you, Jody, and good afternoon, everyone. Our decision to initiate COVID-19 testing is paying off, with overall commercial testing volume up for the quarter 1% from the prior year, even with the impact of the pandemic. Commercial volume in our core oncology business was down 16% year over year, which was significantly better than the up to 40% decline we had anticipated in our forecast. We reached a low point in oncology volume early in the second quarter, which progressively improved through June. However, with the resurgence of the pandemic, physicians report that patient office visits have not yet returned to pre-COVID levels, which is continuing to affect our oncology testing volume. Development testing volume was down 29% year over year and comprised a smaller percentage of our business than commercial testing and generally are billed at a lower rate. The decline is not surprising as these assays are used mainly by pharma and biotech companies in drug development and clinical trials. During the pandemic, many clinical trials came to a halt and some remain on hold today. Volume from COVID testing, while modest during Q2, helped to make up some of the decline in our oncology business. COVID-19 testing is billed at a significantly lower rate per sample than either commercial or development oncology assays. So with slightly higher commercial volume, revenues for the quarter were down 23% from the prior year due to the impact of lower oncology volume and the lower billing rate for our COVID-19 testing. Revenues for the first half of 2020 were up 7% over the prior year. This increase reflected our strong first quarter performance prior to the full impact of the pandemic. Moving on to COVID-19 testing. We believe this testing is an important part of our business for the immediate future. After validating testing in our high-complexity CLIA and BCL2 safety level laboratory, we were challenged, along with other labs, in securing COVID-19 specimen collection kits. We overcame this hurdle initially by tapping into our supplier to secure kit components and then assembling them in-house. Volume has increased exponentially in the weeks since we began distributing COVID-19 specimen collection kits, and we have received over 11,000 samples to date. The average reimbursement for this testing is approximately $100 per specimen. And with testing volume ramping up, we expect COVID-19 testing to have a significant impact on third quarter revenue. To accommodate the robust demand for this testing, we have increased staffing and implemented automation to support our ability to process the high levels of COVID-19 samples we are seeing. Importantly, we are processing COVID-19 tests quickly, with the vast majority of tests resulted sent to health providers within 48 hours of receiving a sample. We also are making good progress in developing our own COVID-19 specimen collection kits and remain on track for launch later this year. These specimen kits will be used to collect samples from patients who wish to be tested for the viral COVID-19 testing such as Biocept offers. These kits will also be validated on a number of platforms for potential sale to other labs. In addition to COVID-19 testing services, we are excited about our agreement with AEGEA Biotechnologies to develop an ultra-high sensitivity assay to detect the virus at very low copy numbers of viral RNA. The AEGEA assay under development will utilize the patented switch blocker technology, which has the potential to be applied to infectious diseases such as COVID-19, in addition to molecular diagnostics and oncology, as Biocept currently uses. The higher level of sensitivity could potentially detect viral load at much lower levels than conventional PCR-based COVID-19 assays. If successful, these tests could have an important differentiating feature, such as detecting lower levels of virus in asymptomatic patients who are able to infect others. This COVID-19 assay would also allow for superior specificity in its ability to identify the different strains of the virus. This agreement provides us with new incremental revenue for R&D development services, and if an assay is successfully developed, AEGEA has granted Biocept an option to expand our COVID-19 testing capabilities with this next generation COVID-19 PCR assay with these potential competitive advantages. We strengthened our core oncology business even during this challenging period, having announced several significant developments that support this business near term and for growth post-pandemic. Among these, and a contributor to our second quarter results, was our newly launched testing to detect and analyze cancer biomarkers on circulating tumor cells, or CTCs, as well as circulating tumor DNA, or ctDNA, found in cerebral spinal fluid in order to help patients whose cancer has metastasized to the brain and central nervous system. In a relatively short time, this offering drove commercial testing volume and expanded our customer base into neuro-oncology. We are among the few national CLIA labs that can analyze and identify important alterations in cerebral spinal fluid, which helps these patients qualify for therapy that may extend their life. We are also benefiting from an increase in sales of our C-Sure blood collection tubes and research use only, or RUO kits. Revenues for these products more than doubled from the first half of 2019, topping $100,000. We introduced our first combined tissue and liquid biopsy RUO kits in March for EGFR mutations. This RUO kit has been awarded CE-IVD mark, allowing us to commercialize it in the European Union as well as other geographies that recognize the CE mark. EGFR is among the most frequently evaluated biomarkers for lung cancer. Our second tissue and blood RUO kit, this one for the biomarker BRAF, was launched in May, and we are working toward CE-IVD mark for this kit as well. Mutations in the BRAF gene are an important factor in determining treatment for melanoma, lung, and other cancers, and are of great interest to researchers and physicians. To be clear, our RUO molecular kits and our blood collection tubes are different from the COVID-19 specimen collection kits we are currently developing. RUO kits allow molecular laboratories around the world to utilize our proprietary target selector oncology assays. This business has a higher margin than our services business, and expansion in this area is an important strategic objective for us. This pre-COVID-19 uptick is encouraging for future growth. Another key development is our recently announced provider agreement with the nation's second largest integrated health delivery system, Highmark Health, which is a Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliated organization. The agreement was earned after a positive review by Highmark's Vitals program, which evaluates new technologies for the clinical utility and health economic benefit. And with that, I'll now turn the call over to Tim Kinney to review our financial results. Tim?
Thanks, Mike, and good afternoon, everyone. For Q2 2020, we reported revenues of $917,000 compared with $1.2 million in Q2 2019, with a decline attributable to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. As mentioned previously, commercial oncology volume declined 16% from the prior year. Commercial reimbursement based on historical mix and tests per accession is in the $1,400 range, up from the $1,100 range in the prior year period. We continue to launch new assays and improve operational processes, leading to increased testing capabilities and physician ordering. In Q2 2020, we performed 1,399 total accessions, compared with 1,340 total accessions in Q2 2019. Commercial volume in Q2 2020 was 1,079, comprised of 897 accessions from our core oncology business and 182 COVID-19 tests. Importantly, we have now received more than 11,000 COVID-19 specimens to date. This compares with 1,066 accessions from our core oncology business in Q2 2019. We believe that the decrease in core oncology accessions is due to the impact of COVID-19. Total cost of revenues was $2.5 million compared with $2.7 million for the prior year period. R&D expenses for Q2 2020 were $1.6 million compared with $1.1 million during Q2 of 2019. The increase was primarily due to the costs associated with the launch of COVID-19 testing, certain laboratory automation projects, and ongoing development and validation of liquid biopsy panels. G&A expenses for Q2 2020 were $1.9 million versus $1.7 million in Q2 2019, with the increase mainly due to higher insurance costs and higher legal fees primarily related to lease negotiations, warrant exercises, and other matters. Sales and marketing expenses were $1.3 million, down from $1.6 million a year ago, with a decrease primarily attributable to lower sales and marketing activities due to pandemic-related travel restrictions. Other expense net for Q2 2020 was $56,000, compared with $1.9 million in the prior year period, which included $1.8 million in warrant inducement expense. Net loss for the second quarter of 2020 was $6.5 million, or 5 cents per share on 127 million weighted average shares outstanding. This compares with a net loss for the second quarter of 2019 of $7.8 million, or 38 cents per share on 21 million weighted average shares outstanding. Now turning to our year-to-date numbers. Our revenues for the first 6 months of 2020 increased by approximately $149,000, or 7%, to $2.4 million compared with the first 6 months of 2019, even with the impact of the pandemic. Cost of revenues for the first half of 2020 were $5.5 million. R&D expenses were $2.9 million. Sales and marketing expenses were $2.8 million, and G&A expenses were $3.8 million. Cash and cash equivalents were $24.1 million as of June 30th, 2020, compared with $9.3 million as of December 31st, 2019. In addition to the $2.3 million in net proceeds from the warrant inducement offering during Q1, we received an additional $700,000 from the underwriter exercising its overallotment warrants from the December 2019 underwritten financing transaction. In March 2020, we completed 2 registered direct offerings, raising net proceeds of approximately $14.7 million. In April, we raised net proceeds of approximately $9.6 million from a registered direct offering. And based on our historical and planned cash usage, we believe our current funding will support operations through most of 2021. However, with the uncertainty introduced by COVID-19 on revenue and collections, our cash runway may be shorter. And now I'll turn the call over to Corey Dunn to provide an overview of our commercial progress. Corey?
Thanks, Tim, and I'm delighted to be speaking with all of you today. As mentioned by Mike, commercial volume gained momentum as the second quarter progressed in lockstep with the lifting of shelter-in-place restrictions. That said, commercial testing continues to be dynamic. Given the pandemic resurgences across the country, it's understandable that some cancer patients are forgoing and postponing physician office visits. Biocept is pleased to fill a niche for patients and physicians alike, particularly during the pandemic, with oncology testing through a simple blood sample rather than a more invasive tissue biopsy. As always, our customer service-oriented approach is working well to support our business niche. An example is sending a mobile phlebotomist to perform the blood draw at the patient's home, allowing patients to continue to shelter in place. Furthermore, we also benefited by profiling through liquid biopsy testing of individual gene testing rather than more expensive large gene panels during this very cost-conscious time. Our introduction of assays performed on cerebrospinal fluid in patients with advanced lung cancer and breast cancers was well-timed, in that this testing during the pandemic provided valuable information for the sickest, most advanced cancer patients. These patients are more likely to see their physicians during the pandemic. The Target Selector cerebrospinal fluid assays provide results to help identify potential treatment options targeted at tumors that have metastasized to the brain or the spinal fluid, where timely treatment is critical. Testing cerebrospinal fluid for biomarkers is key in physicians selecting the best treatment option for the approximately 1/3 of patients diagnosed with breast and lung cancers who may develop brain metastasis. Our sales force is productively working from home using virtual web, off-site meetings, and other creative approaches to connect with physicians while in-person meetings are restricted in healthcare facilities. Notably, we've been able to connect with neuro-oncologists who otherwise would be very difficult to reach. The ability of our sales team to engage with these physicians, often in Zoom meetings along with members of our medical staff, has been effective. The numbers are still modest, but we saw a steady increase throughout the second quarter in the number of cerebrospinal fluid assays processed in the lab, and we continue to see this trend. After starting in the last week of quarter two, COVID-19 testing has been growing significantly. The vast majority of customers to date are from California, and we now are serving customers in multiple states. Our nimble lab size works to our advantage in being able to quickly deliver COVID-19 specimen collection kits and to provide test results in a timely manner, within 48 hours a majority of the time. Our customers are able to securely obtain patient testing results online and to access Biocept personnel throughout the testing process. All of these Biocept services are particularly helpful for skilled nursing facilities to care for their residents and stay compliant with state requirements. So in summary, the commercial team continues to support the execution of our strategic initiatives to build our oncology core business during this challenging time, while also serving public health efforts with COVID-19 testing. With that, I'd like to turn the call back to Mike.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Tim, and thank you both for your outstanding leadership during this challenging time. A foremost concern during the pandemic is the safety and well-being of our employees. We are providing safe working conditions for our lab technicians through social distancing and staggered shifts while delivering the same excellent quality and turnaround time without interruption or delay. Notably, we have maintained our full staff at Biocept with no layoffs or furloughs, having implemented work-from-home policies and strategies designed to emerge from the pandemic in a strong position. Like everyone, we are looking forward to a day when the pandemic is under control and returning our business to more normal operations. Our longer-term corporate priorities remain unchanged. These include increasing market penetration with a focus on neuro-oncology, urology, breast and lung cancer, growing sales of our Target Selector molecular assay RUO kits and our C-Sure blood collection tube, increasing market penetration of our Target Selector NGS lung and breast panels under our collaboration with Thermo Fisher and securing Medicare coverage, entering into additional strategic commercial and technology partnerships, both global and domestic, signing more agreements with third-party health plans, including capitated plans, in expanding our relationship with Blue Cross Blue Shield, publishing clinical case studies and presenting data at scientific conferences that further validate our target selector testing, launching additional assays, launching our Biocept developed COVID-19 specimen collection kits, and using switch blocker technology to develop the next generation COVID-19 PCR assay in collaboration with AEGEA. Importantly, we are positioned to weather the pandemic and for a return to growth. We are an established leader in liquid biopsy, and our target selector testing provides critical information to assist physicians in determining treatment decisions for their patients diagnosed with cancer. Our assays are based on our differentiated platforms that leverage information from both CTCs and ctDNA, both in blood and cerebrospinal fluid. To date, we have tested approximately 25,000 patient samples with our proprietary oncology biomarker assays and over 11,000 COVID-19 samples. We fully expect our test volume will gradually return to more normal levels as the pandemic subsides. We are particularly pleased to have a strong balance sheet, which we expect will support operations through most of 2021. And as Tim mentioned, with the uncertainty of COVID-19 brings to revenue and collections, our cash runway may be shorter. And in closing, I'd especially like to thank our entire team at Biocept for their hard work and dedication during this challenging period. With that overview, we're now ready to take questions. Operator?
Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. To ask a question, you may press star then one on your touch-tone phone. If you're using a speakerphone, please pick up your handset before pressing the keys. To withdraw your question, please press star then two. At this time, we will pause momentarily to assemble our roster.
While we're waiting for the first question, I'd like to mention that Biocept will be presenting at 2 virtual conferences next month. These include the LD Micro 500 conference on September 2nd at 10:40 a.m. Pacific Time, and the H.C. Wainwright 22nd Annual Global Investment Conference being held September 13th through 15th. Webcasts of our presentations will be posted to our website at biocept.com. Okay, operator, we're ready for the first question.
Thank you. Our first question will come from Jason McCarthy with Maxim Group. Please go ahead.
Hey, Jason.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the question. This is Michael Kunowich on the line for Jason.
Oh, hey, Michael.
So I'd like to see if you could provide a bit more color on the COVID testing. So you mentioned doing 11,000 tests to date. Based on your previous announcement on the 3rd, 4,000 of those were in like the last 9 to 10 days. So doing some, back the napkin calculation, that's about 3,000 per week. So my question is, do you have the supply or the ability to produce the supply to continue this runway throughout Q3?
Yeah, the team has done a great job here, and I appreciate, you doing your diligence there on the math. Things are growing fast around here, and to get it in perspective, folks should understand, if they're newer to the story, that as an oncology provider, it's a smaller volume type of testing that you do, in some ways a more comprehensive test, not just one thing you're looking for. And so we were doing, 20 plus specimens per day, and we rapidly ramped now to well into the upper hundreds and soon to be probably crossing that threshold, even greater in the future. But I'll let Tim weigh in on some of our supplies, both for our reagents for the kit as well as the capacity we've grown here lately, maybe some of our automation issues, as well as the collection kits that we have on hand.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So it was a great question. As Mike mentioned in his remarks previously, we actually have secured 50,000 collection kits currently, while we're still in the process of finalizing the preparation surrounding our in-house collection kit, which Mike also mentioned that we'll be releasing later on this year. In addition to that, we are in a fortunate situation to be on a standing order with our suppliers associated with the reagents that we require in our CLIA laboratory to actually perform COVID-19 testing. So I would say that those two things combined, we've been able to effectively overcome the supply chain challenges that we experienced, and I think a variety of other folks have experienced earlier during the pandemic. So I think we're in very good shape there, being able to continue to do COVID-19 testing here at Biocept. And what Mike was alluding to also with automation, we're also in the process of implementing a variety of different things in our CLIA lab, both for ordering of COVID-19 testing more efficiently with our clients, but also be able to process those tests in a much more efficient manner as well once they're into our process stream in CLIA. We're implementing liquid handlers, what we call decappers, to eliminate potential issues with people constantly doing repetitive motion. And I think with our clients having the ability to order in a much more efficient process on the front end, and also us providing results to them in a more efficient process on the back end, is positioned Biocept very well to be able to continue to ramp up our COVID-19 testing volume.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, thank you. And then I'd also like to see if you could discuss some of the factors which enable you to provide results within 48 hours, because that's pretty impressive. I know that wait time, particularly out here in New York, have been as much as a week, which renders the information basically outdated. So could you comment on that at all?
Yeah, in fact, some of the national labs have been running at 2 weeks, which is really, challenging for people that are waiting for those results. But this is critical for us. This is a test that's vitally needed by those that are having it, and, both for their own health, but of course, society in general. So we're committed to maintaining that turnaround time, and the team's been working very hard to make sure that through automation initiatives we're putting in there, the test gets right into the lab ASAP. We've also increased our staffing here at the lab, and we now are 7-day-a-week operations. So tests that arrive on Saturday are going to get run on Saturday night or Sunday morning, and results back Sunday night or Monday morning to the referring physician. So that's critical for us, and I think important for any provider. I don't know if folks all saw the article by Bill Gates where he mentioned that he feels tests shouldn't be paid for if they're beyond 72 hours. So as a lab representative, that might not be the greatest thing, but at the same time, I think in this case it's relevant and important to make sure you meet that guidance.
All right, thank you. And then I just have one more on the PCR test that's being developed with AGEA.
Mm-hmm.
And so what are the main differences that are going to be seen with a lower limit of detection test? Like, how much lower of a limit would you expect to see if you can, use oncology as a model? And then how would you expect this to actually translate into practical results?
Well, I think the way to look at it is oncology as a model. At this point, it's premature for us to make any claims about the performance of the test, because we're not at that point of the development yet, where the designs would lead you to expect similar results with what we've seen in oncology. But to give you an idea, standard molecular assays in oncology that are done on PCR would have sensitivities anywhere from 1 to 5, down to 1 to 5% prevalence of the target. And our current target selector has, you can go down to 0.03 to 0.05%. So, far more sensitive performance with our oncology assays versus standard PCR assays, if you will. That would be the goal of, the developers here, as well as Dr. Arnold, who, provides much of the designs for the assays. And so, we'll keep folks abreast, with our partners at AGEA along the way as we make progress there.
All right. Thank you very much, and congratulations on the progress.
Yeah, thank you.
Our next question comes from Sally Yanchus with Brookline Capital Markets. Please go ahead.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hey,
Thanks
Sally.
for joining the call. Hi. Just wondering, do you have any expectations for when the traditional, liquid biopsy, physician visits or, business is going to rebound? I mean, I know it varies regionally around the U.S., but I mean, when do you have any expectation of when that's going to pick up again?
Well, people are still getting cancer, of course, and so this is a
Right.
concern, and not amongst us, but amongst many of the physicians we serve in the industry. As we talk about this, we've made so much progress as a healthcare arena with early detection and getting cancer early, which is critical. There's a lot of concern about patients avoiding physicians' visits and stuff, and are we going to have a problem at hand? I think it's going to dovetail, as Corey mentioned earlier, with the I guess pandemic, subsiding somewhat. It's kind of spotty now. As we said, it started to come back when everybody started going back to work, and then, once people started to be fearful of this resurgence, it started to slow down just a bit. We, I haven't seen it go down to how it was when everybody was shelter in place. And like you said, different regions are at different points, and it's variable.
Right,
One region will be in business, and then everybody has to slow down again because the pandemic came back.
Right,
so it's kind of hard to predict. Now, we're also, though, gaining new clients in neuro-oncology with the CSF. And Corey, maybe you can talk a little bit about our ability to get in front of physicians with Zoom.
Right. So we have such a nice, unique niche with cerebral spinal fluid biomarker testing. We have been able to, and especially going after a very small and targeted sector of oncology, which is neuro-oncology, it served us well to be so targeted and specialized during these pandemic times. So we've been able to connect with them remotely more so.
And I think last time I mentioned to folks that we had just started that, and we were having good luck so far, and that's continued. And, the only advantage of the oncologists not having quite the patient load as they used to have is that they're more available. Normally, they're very difficult to see, and in case folks don't understand the selling process there's a shortage of medical oncologists and a super shortage of neuro-oncologists in America, and they're normally scheduled morning, noon, and night with patient visits, so it's hard to get their time. Well, they've had a lot more time, and they've actually got on Zoom calls sometimes for 1 or 2 hours with our sales team and our medical staff learning about our testing. So that's been a side benefit,
good,
the ability to really get the message across.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. And then do you expect to continue? You spent $1.6 million in R&D this quarter. Is that like a quarterly run rate that you look going forward, or is it going to vary like before the end of this year and into next?
I'll let Tim address that. I will say that in our R&D expenditure, it's not just pure kind of our work like you're thinking of, like developing our COVID assay. That's also going to include like the validations of the COVID kits and the tubes and the collection kits. Everything done in the CLIA lab has to be validated. So that's reclassed over to R&D, but Tim can address your question in more detail.
Yeah, actually, I think Mike answered it very well, but the second quarter did certainly have a few $100,000 of COVID-19 validation costs in there. So when you say, do I expect it to continue at that level, certainly not for COVID-19 related validations, but to the extent that we could, as I've said, we are constantly and continuing to launch new testing capabilities that where our physicians could order those tests if they deem it necessary for patient care. So from time to time, we've always done that with new tests that come out. But Q2, I would say, was somewhat unique in that there was a lot of heavy lifting to be done with launching the COVID-19 testing.
Got it. Okay. And then what about next year? Do you think you'll continue at the 2020 level, or?
With COVID-19 testing or overall?
Oh, no, overall R&D,
Overall R&D. It's hard to say. Keep in mind that every time, even on COVID-19, if the GIA test were to work out, we would exercise our option to perform that test. We'd have to have a revalidation there. With our own collection kits, we'll have to revalidate. So as long as we develop new improvements to this process, there's going to be some expenditure. But certainly, I think most folks would agree that the revenue that's potential with COVID-19 right now probably justifies
worth it,
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, no, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Sure.
This concludes our question and answer session. I would like to turn the conference back over to Michael Null for any closing remarks.
Well, thank you, operator, and thank you to everybody for attending today. On behalf of our board of directors and our hardworking team at Biocept, we want to thank everybody for participating today and for your interest in our company. We look forward to providing an update on our next conference call when we report, believe it or not, third quarter financial results and provide an update on our progress in November. Thanks again, and have a great day.
The conference is now concluded. Thank you for attending today's presentation. You may now disconnect.